Here in this folder, I have few Excel files, and if I run this code, this single line of code, it deletes all the files from the folder. This video is going to be interesting in so many ways. So we are going to learn 10 different tips and tricks to write VBA code to do small but quick things in Excel. So let's get started. Now in this video, I'll show you a single line of code, how to use input box and how to enter that value in a cell. So this input box is a function, and in this function we have few arguments that you need to define. So if I type input box and then if I enter a bracket parenthesis, so it shows me a few arguments to specify. So the first argument is prompt. Prompt argument is basically the text which shows you within the input box, that main text. And the next is title. This is optional argument. If you don't want to specify it, you can skip it. Is up to you. So title is basically the title bar, the text that you have on the title bar. Now the third one is default. So default is the value that will show up in the input bar by default. So if you want to give an example to the user, so the most important arguments is the first three: prompt, title, and default. Now let's create a simple input box to ask for the first name. So the first thing I'm going to specify for prompt. And now I'm going to specify the title for the input box. And in the end, the value that I want to show there as a default value. Now this is the exact same input box that I showed you in the very beginning of this video. Now to get this value, now to get the value from the input box in a specific cell, I'm going to declare a cell here. Let's say B1. Now if I run this code, oops, so I need to enter a comma here. All right, so now if I run this code, so it shows me an input box with the title, enter name, and the prompt is enter your first name here. And then here we have that default value which we specified in the argument. Now I'm going to enter my name, my first name here, and now I'm going to click OK. So as soon as I click OK, it enters that value in the cell B1. There is a function called date that we can use to insert or get the current date as per the system. So here I'm going to insert the current date in the cell A1. So first of all, I'm going to specify the cell A1. And then I'm going to assign the value that coming from the function date. So when you're using this date function, you don't need to specify any argument. You simply need to use the keyword date. That's it. So now when I run this code, it gives me the current date as per my system, and it inserts it into the cell A1. And in the same way, if you want to get the current date and current time, you can use this function called now. And this function also doesn't need any argument to be specified by you. You simply need to use the keyword now. And now if I run this code, it gives me the current date and the current time into the cell A1. Now let's suppose you need that date or time in a specific format, a custom format. In that case, you can use this function called format and then define date function to get the date. And in the second argument, you can define the format of the date. So I'm going to use dd. And now if I run this code, it gives me the date into the format that I have specified. In this video, we will learn how to combine or concatenate two values. So the first thing is to define the first value And then you need to use the sign of ampersand. And then you need to define the second value. Now to get the combination of both of these values, I'm going to use the range A1 to get the result. And now if I run this code, so it combines Excel and Champs. So if I want to add a space between these two numbers, so I'm going to use the third value as a space, and I'm going to use ampersand between Excel space and Champs. So there are two ampersand to combine these three values. Now, as you can see here, I'm using these two text values, Excel and Champs. But if you are using numbers, in that case, you don't need to use and double quotation marks. You can also take values from a cell to combine, to concatenate. And now if I run this code, so it gives me the value from the cell B1 and C1 into the cell A1. You can also store values in a variable to combine them. So here I'm combining the value from the variable first, and then a space, and then the variable second. So I get value from B1 and C1 into the cell A1. So here we will look at how we can write a VBA code to sum values from a range of cells. Now for this, I'm going to go to the developer tab and then open the Visual Basic editor, and then go to the insert option and then module. So here's my new module where I'm going to write the code. Let me name the macro first. Now the first thing that I need to use is the application object and then the worksheet function. So when you use this worksheet function property, it gives you access to all the functions that you have in Excel. So as soon as I enter dot, it shows me a list of all the functions that I have in Excel. And from here, I'm going to use the sum function. And now I'm going to specify the range for which I want to calculate a sum. That's the range A1 to A16. Now I'm going to use the cell B1 to get the result of this function. All right, so if I run this code, so it returns a sum of all the values that we have in range A1 to A16 in cell B1. So you need to use worksheet function, and then you need to use the sum function, and you need to specify the range from where you want to calculate sum. And if you want to sum values from an entire column, in that case, you simply need to specify the column in this way. So this will actually sum all the values from the column A. And if you want to go with an entire row, in that case, this will be like this, the row 1, or if you want to go with row 2 or row 3, so on and so forth. Right, so let's say you want to delete an Excel file using a VBA code. So for this, you need to use two things. The first is the kill function, and then you need to use the path of that file, the path where that file is saved. So right now, I'm going to use the kill statement. and then the path name. So here I have the path of the file which is saved on my desktop in the new folder, the book one, right? So when I run this code, now as you can see, it deletes the file that I have specified using the path. So you need kill function, and then you need the path of that file that you want to delete. Now let's suppose if you want to delete all the files from the folder, from a specific folder, like this folder that I have right now, and I have almost 9 more files here. So what I will do, so instead of using a specific name, I'm going to use a wildcard character here, asterisk, and for the file format, again, I'm going to use the asterisk. So this path will delete all the files from the folder where the format or the extension of the file starts with XL. So as you know that all the extension of Excel files starts with XL, so it will delete all the Excel files from that folder. Now, if I run this code, so the kill function and the path of the file, that's it. VBA. By using with statement, you can structure your code in a well-defined manner. So let me take you through an example. I have a code here in my Visual Basic Editor with 5 lines of code that actually referring to the cell A1 5 times. Now by using the with statement, I can restructure my code and I can save a lot of time of mine as well. So what I will do, I will start my statement with the keyword with. And after that, I will specify the cell A1, which is constant in all of these 5 lines. And to end the statement, I will use the keyword and with. Now, as I have already specified the cell A1, I will remove this part from all these 5 lines. So in this way, I'm referring to the cell A1, but I'm not actually typing it or actually adding it in my code again and again. So when you use with statement and specify a cell, so it tells VBA that the code which is within this statement, it actually referring to the cell A1 or anything which you specify. Now, if I run this code, it executes all the 5 lines by referring to the cell A1. So by using with statement, you can structure your code in a better way. On how we can run a VBA code while opening a workbook or while closing a workbook. So let me open my Visual Basic Editor. And here I have a one line code that says message box hello. So when I run this code, it shows me a message box with a message hello. So now I want to run this macro every time I open this workbook. So for this, the only thing that I need to change is the name of the macro. So instead of any random name, I need to use a specific name, auto underscore open. So when you use this name for a macro, it tells Excel to run this particular macro while opening that workbook. And now if I close my Visual Basic Editor and save this file, and now this workbook is already saved into macro enabled workbook. So if I close this workbook and try to open it again, so it runs that particular macro where I have changed the name auto underscore open. And you can also tell Excel to run a particular macro while closing a workbook. So for this, you need to change auto underscore open to auto underscore close. And if I close the Visual Basic Editor, save the file, and when I try to close this workbook, so it will run that macro first and then close the workbook. Write a VBA code to rename a sheet. So for this, first thing that you need to do is you need to specify the sheet that you want to rename. And then you need to use the name property. And then you need to specify the name that you want to give to the sheet, the new name. Now let's take a look at a few examples to understand. Now in this line of code, I'm referring to the sheet 3 and using the name property, and then I have specified the name my sheet. Now if I run this code, it renames the sheet 3 to my sheet. Now in the second line of code, I am referring to the sheet 2 that is on the second number in my workbook. And then I'm using the name property and then the name that I want to give to the sheet 2. Now if I run this code, so it renames the sheet that is on the second number, second position in my workbook. Now in this third line of code, I'm referring to the active sheet, the sheet that is activate right now. And again, I'm using the name property and the name that I want to give. And now if I run this code, so it renames the sheet that is active right now. So you need to specify the sheet name or the number of the sheet, and then you need to use the name property, and then you need to define the name that you want to give to the sheet. That's it. Here we will see how we can create a named range using a VBA code. So for this, I'm going to go to the developer tab and click on the Visual Basic to open the Visual Basic editor. And then I'm going to go to the insert and click on module to insert a new module. And now I'm going to name this macro. And now first thing that I need to use is I need to specify the active workbook object because I want to create a name range in the active workbook. And after that, I need to use the names property. And after that, I will use the add method. So this small line of code actually tells VBA to create a new name range in the active workbook. Now here we have few arguments that we need to define, but we will only define arguments that are required to create a named range. So first thing I will do is I will specify the name that I want to give. And after that, the refers to means the range for which I want to create this named range. Now when you specify this range, you need to specify the sheet name as well, and along with the equal sign. So if I want to create a named range in sheet 2 for range A1 to A5, the specification of the range will go something like this. And I will also use $sign to freeze this range. And now if I run this code and go to the sheet 2, so here we have that named range that we have just created using this VBA code. And now if I click on this range, so it refers to the cell A1 to A5. And that's the same range that we have specified in our code. And if you want to create a named range from the selection, the range that you have selected, you can simply use the keyword selection instead of the address of the range. Now, if I select this range or these cells and run this code, so here I have a new name range with the name my range name, and that name range actually refers to the selection of the cells. So here I have a workbook with the name book 1 on my desktop, and I want to rename this to book 2. So for this, I'm going to use the name statement in VBA. So I will type name and then path of the workbook or Excel file that I want to rename. So in this path, I have entire path and then the name of the workbook and the extension of the workbook, the saving format, right? And after that, I will use the keyword as. And now I need to use again the path and the new name of the workbook that I want to give to that file. So I will use book 2, or I would like to use Puneet sample file. And now, so this statement says name of this workbook to change to this workbook. So book 1 to Puneet sample file. So when I run this code, so as soon as I run this code, it simply changes the name of the workbook from the desktop. And if you want to learn more, make sure to subscribe to this channel because I'll be coming out with a lot of cool VBA tips and tricks in coming weeks.